Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
It's great to be back.
So this is the space where we try to take these frameworks that can sometimes feel a little intimidating.
Right. And make them accessible.
Exactly. We want to turn them into sources of clarity and hopefully confidence. And today we are opening up a subject that I think causes a tremendous amount of anxiety for learners all over the world.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big word.
Understanding your English proficiency level. From A1 all the way up to C2.
Just hearing those letters and numbers can be stressful for people.
It really can. You know that feeling? You hear a label like B2 or C1, and it can spark this immediate anxiety, this fear of being judged, of being put in a box as definitively good or bad.
Mm-hmm. Feels very permanent.
It does. But our mission today is to really shift that perspective.
Yeah.
We're drawing on a lot of guidance that's designed for, calm, supportive learning. A lot like the ethos we found in the resources from Fluent Mindcast.
I really like their approach. It's very gentle.
It is. And that's what we want to do here. We're here to help you treat these levels not as these rigid verdicts, but more like a detailed, helpful map.
A navigational compass. That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, we want to help you pinpoint where you are right now on your learning journey, but without any of the pressure or judgment, so you can just move forward with confidence.
And that perspective shift is so essential.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think of this deep dive not as getting a final grade, but as just picking up that compass.
It changes everything.
It does. I mean, these labels, A1, B2, whatever, they were created by linguists and educators with a very specific goal in mind.
Which was?
To help organize language learning on a global scale. They're just functional tools for measurement, for guidance.
Mm-hmm.
They let schools and teachers and learners themselves communicate clearly about ability.
But they're not limitations.
They're absolutely not limitations designed to define you as a person permanently.
And I think what's so fascinating here is that the goal is just to unpack what each level really truly represents. But using, concrete, real-life examples.
Right. Moving away from this vague, scary idea of fluency.
Yes. Towards understanding what you can actually do with the language right here, right now.
Precisely. And this all comes from one foundational source, which is the Common European Framework of Reference, or as most people know it, the CEFR.
The CEFR, okay.
It's a widely adopted and I think a brilliant system that shifts the whole focus away from just, memorizing rules.
Rote learning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it moves it toward practical application.
Okay, so let's really unpack that, this core concept of the CEFR, because it feels like a really powerful idea that forces us to ask a fundamental question. What does it actually mean to be proficient in a language?
It means focusing on functional communication. That's the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
The CEFR doesn't really care about textbook perfection in some abstract sense.
I see.
It cares if you can do a real-world task. How clearly can you communicate what you need? How confidently can you handle a situation that's, a little unexpected?
Can you get your point across?
Can you achieve your communication goal? Whether that's just ordering a coffee or, writing a complex technical report. The whole framework is just deeply, deeply focused on the ability to use English effectively in real life.
And this is such a fundamental insight for you as a learner to grasp, because once you know where you stand right now, like precisely where you are on that map, your learning just becomes so much more focused. And I think this is the critical part. It becomes so much less stressful.
For sure. You can stop spinning your wheels. You stop trying to learn, say, C1 level vocabulary, when what you really need to be doing is just solidifying your B1 grammar structures.
It lets you be strategic.
Highly strategic. And that makes the whole process feel more manageable. Less like climbing an impossibly huge mountain.
So let's start by tackling what is probably a major psychological hurdle for so many people, the test itself.
The test.
Yeah. Because I think when most people hear the phrase English level test, they get this immediate mental picture, sitting in some high-pressure room, staring at a piece of paper with dozens of frustrating, really specific grammar questions.
We've all been there.
We have.
Right.
We've all been conditioned to believe that proficiency is purely about memorizing these, arcane rules that you never actually use.
And that expectation is really a legacy of older teaching methods. It's an idea that needs a serious correction.
So what's the correction?
Real proficiency,
Yeah.
at least as it's measured by the CEFR, goes much, much deeper than just parsing a complex sentence or finding a misplaced comma.
Okay.
A truly effective CEFR-aligned level test is checking for something far more valuable. It's checking for your communicative competence.
So we're talking about something more than just knowledge then, more than just what you've memorized.
Absolutely. We're looking at how well you understand meaning. the core message. Even if the grammar, the delivery isn't perfect. We're assessing how you interpret sentences in their context, how quickly you can connect ideas.
And I imagine how you respond.
Crucially, yes, how naturally and spontaneously you can respond in a real two-way conversation. It's really a measure of your linguistic resilience and your adaptability.
That's the core distinction, isn't it? It's the difference between, say, knowing the rule for how to structure a third conditional sentence.
Right, knowing it from a textbook.
And then actually using the third conditional correctly and naturally in a conversation when you're, I don't know, reflecting on a big decision you made 5 years ago.
Exactly. One is just academic knowledge. The other is a functional skill.
And they are not the same thing.
Not at all. And we see this tension so clearly when we look at two contrasting examples that our source material often brings up.
Okay, like what?
Well, on one hand, you might have the meticulous learner, the one who has internalized every irregular past participle, who has read every grammar rule
Get
book,
to know all the rules.
all of them. But when you put them in a casual, fast-paced conversation, they completely freeze up. They just struggle intensely with the spontaneity that's required.
And on the other hand,
you have the highly fluent speaker, someone who communicates effortlessly, who can jump into complex topics, handle the flow of conversation seamlessly, but they might make small, non-critical grammar mistakes.
what kind of mistakes?
Oh, maybe forgetting the "as" on a third-person verb or misusing a preposition here and there, things that don't actually block communication.
So if the real measure is functional communication, then the second speaker is actually far more proficient in the real world despite those little technical errors.
That is the core takeaway.
Yeah.
And that is why the CEFR levels are based on practical skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and not just on abstract memorization.
It's all about the balance.
It is. The focus is on the effective use of the language to achieve a goal. And a good level test helps you, the learner, identify that necessary balance between formal accuracy and communicative fluency.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think,
Yeah.
because this focus on functionality leads to a fun little curiosity that just completely demolishes the idea of seeking textbook perfection.
I love this part.
Our sources note that many, if not most, native English speakers would actually fail some of the more formal, intricate grammar tests for the C1 or C2 levels.
It's the ultimate reality check, isn't it? A test might demand that you identify the technical name for some complex, non-standard clause.
One thing you've never even heard of.
Exactly. Or it might require formal knowledge of rhetorical devices that a native speaker uses instinctively every single day, but they've never had to formally categorize them.
So native speakers communicate perfectly fine, but their knowledge is more intuitive, not academic.
Precisely. So if even the people who use the language fluently and naturally every single day would struggle with the most formal academic tests,
Then why should you, as a learner, hold yourself to that impossible standard? It just reinforces that the focus should be squarely on functional use, on resilience, not on some unattainable idea of perfection.
and this brings us right back to the psychological benefit of doing an assessment. We need to start viewing a level test as simply a snapshot of your ability.
Just a snapshot. I like that.
It is not a permanent defining judgment. It is not a label that gets stamped on your forehead forever.
That's such a crucial distinction. It really helps to remove the pressure. So you're saying that your assessed level is dynamic. It can change.
Absolutely. It's highly sensitive to external factors. Your level can change depending on the subject matter, for instance. You might be a C1 when you're discussing your specific field of expertise,
Right.
but you might drop down to a B1 if you're suddenly discussing, deep philosophy.
That makes perfect sense. It also changes based on context, how much stress you're under, or even just what kind of day you're having.
All of those things.
And what about the 4 core skills? Listening, reading, speaking, writing.
Well, it's entirely normal to have different levels and different skills. We see it all the time. You might have someone with incredibly strong reading comprehension, maybe a solid B2 because they read a lot of news in English.
Okay.
But their speaking skills might only be at a B1 level because they just don't get many opportunities to practice actually producing the language.
So the tests are valuable because they highlight these specific nuances. They show you both your strengths and the precise areas where a little practice will give you the most benefit.
Exactly.
There's also a really powerful proactive tip here related to stress, isn't there? Our sources consistently suggest that your confidence alone can significantly improve your performance on a test.
It's huge. When you manage to relax, When you stop constantly self-editing and judging every word as you speak.
That little critic in your head?
Yes. When you quiet that critic, your real underlying ability, your actual knowledge, it just shows through much more clearly.
It really is a mental game then.
It is. If you can reframe the test in your mind as an objective, self-discovery exercise rather than some final make or break exam, you remove a massive amount of cognitive load.
And that freedom from pressure allows your real skills to come out.
And that relaxed performance is a much, much truer measure of where you actually are in your journey.
Okay, so now that we've established the right mindset, calm, non-judgmental, focused on function, let's move into the levels themselves, starting at the very beginning.
So let's do it.
And as we guide you through these 6 stages, we really want to encourage you to just notice which of these descriptions feel familiar, which ones feel comfortable to you right now. Try not to focus on the ones that feel intimidating or stressful.
Yeah, this should be a calm process of self-recognition.
Exactly. So we begin with A1. The sources describe this as opening the door.
I love that description.
Me too. It's so hopeful. This stage is beautifully described as English being new and exciting. This is the true starting line, the moment where language acquisition moves from, zero to actual actionable communication.
At A1, the focus is exclusively on the most immediate, the most essential, and the most concrete things, what we often call survival language.
Survival language, okay.
So learners at this level can understand and they can use very basic, simple expressions that are designed to meet their immediate needs.
Can you give us some specific examples? What can an A1 speaker actually do?
We're talking about the simplest of introductions, saying hello, stating your name, asking someone where they're from. You can use familiar, isolated words and phrases related to your immediate environment.
So pointing at things.
Pretty much. Identifying concrete objects like table, phone, or bus stop. You can fill in a simple form with your personal details, like your name and address. The vocabulary is extremely limited, mostly focused on very high-frequency nouns and verbs.
And I imagine the pace of communication at this point has to be painstakingly slow.
It is, because the learner is constructing every single sentence from scratch. They're often relying on translating from their native language in their head first.
Right.
But the sources emphasize a really critical point here. Every single sentence that you construct at A1 is a small victory.
Yeah.
You've moved from a complete linguistic vacuum to actually initiating communication.
That is immense progress. It's not failure.
Not at all. And what's the most important psychological takeaway for the A1 learner?
I'm guessing it has to do with mistakes.
It does. It takes immense courage to start speaking a new language when you have such a limited tool set. So the crucial insight here is that mistakes are not just normal, they are absolutely expected, and they are necessary for growth.
If you're not making mistakes at A1,
You're not trying hard enough. You're not pushing the boundaries of what you currently know.
so A1 is not bad English, it's just the essential foundational groundwork. And recognizing and solidifying that foundation is the necessary first step to get anywhere else.
Absolutely. So moving up from there, we get to A2. This is described as the daily life toolkit stage.
The toolkit, I like that.
It's where English really transforms from being a novelty into a genuinely useful communication device for routine, practical situations.
So what are the specific linguistic capabilities that mark that transition from A1 to A2? What's the big jump?
The A2 speaker starts to connect phrases. They move from just isolated words to simple sentences. They often start using the past tense to describe recent events, or the future tense to talk about simple plans.
So they can tell a little story.
A very simple one, yes. They can handle simple, straightforward conversations about routine topics, discussing their work duties, their family members, asking for directions, or talking about their hobbies and shopping.
And the comprehension must improve significantly here as well.
It does. Understanding short, simple texts becomes much easier. Things like reading a menu or a basic email or short notices. They can follow basic, explicit instructions like directions on a map or simple steps in a recipe.
The confidence boost at A2 must be massive.
It is, because you can suddenly navigate so much more of the world in English than you could at A1.
But A2 is also famously associated with that common plateau, the point where so many learners feel stuck and frustrated. Why does that happen?
It's a really natural cognitive barrier. At A1, every new word or grammar rule, like learning how to conjugate a simple verb, it feels like this huge visible leap forward.
Right, you feel the progress every day.
Exactly. At A2, however, You're primarily just refining your existing structures. You're connecting ideas with more complex, though still basic conjunctions. You're handling more nuance in your vocabulary, and that refinement process is just less instantly gratifying.
It feels less like growth and more like just grinding out practice.
It does. But the progress is happening, it's happening beneath the
So
surface.
your brain is still working.
It's working overtime. The brain is quietly absorbing complex patterns, idioms, and the faster rhythms of native speech in the background. The interesting thing here is that A2 learners often understand a vast amount more than they can actually express.
So their input is way ahead of their output.
Far ahead, they're collecting all the pieces, but the assembly process, that spontaneous speech, it still lags behind.
So just to reassure you, if you feel like you're at A2 and you're stuck, that feeling is actually a sign that your brain is processing the sheer volume of English you've learned. You just need to be patient for the output speed to catch up.
With patience and consistent practice, that slow, deliberate speech gradually transforms into more natural conversation. A2 solidifies English as a real, usable communication tool. It gets you ready to move into true independence.
So before we move into those independent stages, let's just take a gentle internal pause right here.
Good idea.
This is a moment for some calm self-reflection. Don't stress, don't judge. Just reflect honestly on those A1 and A2 descriptions we just went through.
And we really encourage you to focus only on communication and meaning. Don't
Yeah.
worry about perfect grammar or your accent. Just ask yourself a couple of practical questions.
Okay.
First, if someone described their upcoming weekend plans, simple things like going to the market or visiting a friend, could you understand the main points of what they're saying right now?
And second?
And second, could you easily describe your own daily routine in English to a friend or a colleague? Even if you have to search for a word or two, could you get the message across?
If those routine tasks feel manageable, if you can convey the information you need to and grasp the core message from someone else, then you have secured a solid A2 base. Or maybe you've already moved beyond it.
Use that self-knowledge as a source of motivation, because building that foundation is often the hardest part of the journey.
All right, B1. This is where the journey really transitions from using English for basic survival to using it for genuine interaction.
A huge leap.
It is. Our sources frame B1 as a significant milestone, a true turning point toward functional independence. This level unlocks the ability to use English to navigate new environments without needing constant, explicit help.
And the shift is really from talking about concrete needs to talking about abstract thoughts.
How so?
Well, at B1, learners can manage most travel situations. They can deal with unpredictable incidents, like a delayed flight or getting lost, with a measurable level of effectiveness. And they can handle conversations that go well beyond just basic necessities and routine small talk.
So linguistically, what is the B1 speaker doing differently from the A2 speaker?
They're starting to express opinions. It might be in a simple way, but they can articulate their viewpoint and give basic reasons for it. They're also using more complex sequencing, words like, although, because, or therefore.
Which lets them build a narrative.
Exactly. It allows them to tell coherent stories, to explain experiences, to discuss recent events, and to talk about their future plans with some real depth and structure.
That sounds like a massive leap from the routine topics of A2.
It absolutely is. However, the sources also acknowledge a very common psychological challenge at this level.
Which is?
Fluency at B1 can still feel quite fragile. If a conversation is very fast or highly unexpected, or if it involves vocabulary that's outside of their established comfort zone,
They can still get lost.
the B1 speaker may still struggle to maintain the pace and accuracy. They're functional, yes, but they still rely pretty heavily on familiar conversational ground vocabulary that they've rehearsed.
But the real-world relevance of B1 is huge. It offers significant benefits for your career and for travel.
It's often considered the first highly practical level for professional life. We noted that many international companies consider B1 to be sufficient for basic day-to-day professional communication.
Things like handling simple emails.
Right. Participating in predictable meetings, understanding general work pace instructions. Reaching B1 really means you're no longer just learning English. You are actively using it as a functional tool for your life, your travels, and the early stages of your career development.
Okay, so let's move up to B2, functional and flexible. If B1 grants independence, B2 seems to demonstrate true competence. This is where English starts to feel much more robust, much more natural, and highly flexible.
A B2 speaker is genuinely competent across a really wide range of situations. They can understand the main ideas of complex texts, and we mean nuanced news articles, detailed reports, or even technical information in their own field.
And in conversation.
Crucially, they can follow sophisticated discussions on both familiar and unfamiliar topics with relative ease. And their ability to express their own ideas becomes clearer, more detailed, and far more confident than it was at B1.
What's the shift in their language structure here?
The B2 speaker is moving toward true structural mastery. They're comfortably using complex sentence structures, like various relative clauses, and they're mastering the timing and use of compound tenses.
Like the present perfect continuous.
Or the past perfect, yeah. Things that allow for real precision in describing time relationships. They can spontaneously construct an argument and defend it effectively.
And there's a widely recognized cognitive milestone that happens around the B2 level, right?
Yes. This is often the level where people report that the translation filter in their brain finally starts to fade away.
So they're not translating anymore.
They start to actually think in English, rather than constantly translating internally from their native language. And this dramatically increases both the speed and the naturalness of their communication. It allows for genuine, quick-witted exchanges.
But this increased proficiency leads directly to a fascinating psychological phenomenon that our sources call the B2 paradox.
Oh, yes, the paradox.
Even at this highly functional level, many people still believe they are not fluent or not good enough. Why does their self-criticism seem to surge right when their ability is peaking?
It's a sign of linguistic maturity, actually. As your proficiency rockets up toward B2 and beyond, your awareness of mistakes increases even faster than your skill.
So you notice more?
You notice everything. At A1, you don't even know that certain grammar points exist. At B2, you suddenly realize the subtle differences between near synonyms like achieve versus accomplish. You notice the nuance of an idiom. You hear the minor grammatical mistakes you still make.
So you gain the sophisticated linguistic ear of a critic.
But you apply it ruthlessly to yourself.
That is a critical reassurance. So if you're at B2 and you're constantly frustrated by your own imperfections, it's actually definitive evidence of how much progress you've made. Your awareness is just in tune to a much higher, more demanding frequency.
Absolutely. The conclusion here is that B2 speakers communicate very effectively and professionally. They're often capable of studying at a university level or working in an English-only environment. Fluency, again, does not mean perfection. And B2 is already a formidable level of competence that opens most doors globally. So let's take another moment now. A quiet reflection focused honestly on your ability around the B1 and B2 levels.
And this self-check should be a little more rigorous than the first one. We're moving beyond simple routines now. So ask yourself this. Can you follow a complex discussion on a familiar topic?
Maybe something related to your industry, or a specific hobby, or even a current political debate. Can you keep up with the details, the counter-arguments, and the emotional tone of that conversation?
And then on the output side?
Furthermore, can you express a detailed opinion or an argument about that same topic? Can you explain your reasoning, justify your viewpoint, and handle a polite disagreement without constantly having to search for the basic structures to do it?
If you can navigate complex topics like that, maybe with some necessary effort and a few brief pauses, then you are firmly in the independent stages.
And the path to mastery is right ahead of you.
All right, moving into the mastery stages, C1 and C2. Here we're talking about a level of high precision, flexibility, and real control over the language. C1, in particular, signifies a mastery that allows for true sophistication in your communication.
At C1, the learner moves entirely beyond just understanding the literal surface message of what's being said.
What do you mean by that?
They are consistently capable of understanding implicit meaning. This means they can grasp sarcasm, they can pick up on subtle differences in tone, they can recognize rhetorical devices in a text or in a speech. They understand when something's being said indirectly.
And the vocabulary must be extremely rich at this point.
It is. It's not just broad, it's deep and it's precise. C1 speakers know the correct collocations, which words naturally go together. They can use a wide range of idioms and idiomatic expressions naturally, without sounding forced.
Their expression just feels highly precise and sophisticated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which allows them to communicate complex ideas effortlessly.
And this level of control makes English comfortable for serious, high-stakes applications. Things like taking on a leadership role in a work meeting, full immersion in higher education, or having deep, nuanced discussions where ambiguity really needs to be avoided.
Or, conversely, where ambiguity needs to be employed intentionally. They can play with the language.
That's a great point.
And what's fascinating here is that The goal isn't necessarily error-free communication. It's more about exceptional error management. Flexibility is paramount at C1.
So they still make mistakes.
Of course, every speaker of every language makes mistakes, but C1 speakers correct themselves quickly, naturally, and often, without even interrupting the cognitive flow of the conversation. The communication is just smooth, resilient, and adaptable, even when they're dealing with abstract or highly unpredictable scenarios.
I find the shift in focus at C1 to be the most compelling insight of the entire framework.
Which is?
The primary goal shifts away from learning English, and it becomes using English to learn and achieve other things.
That's the definition of linguistic freedom at this level. The language itself is no longer the central focus or the bottleneck.
It's just a tool.
A transparent tool through which you can acquire new specialized knowledge or pursue complex interests. Whether that's studying astrophysics at an English university, negotiating multi-million-dollar deals, or reading dense philosophical texts just for pleasure. C1 represents mastery with flexibility.
And then finally we have C2, full control and freedom. When we hear C2, I think the immediate, often intimidating image that comes to mind is sounding exactly like a native speaker.
Right, that's the common myth.
But the CEFR definition is much more specific and nuanced than just simple mimicry.
C2 is positioned as near-native proficiency, but what it fundamentally means is full control, complete understanding, and total adaptability across all registers of the language. It does not strictly require you to mimic a native accent or specific regional idioms.
But it means you have the capacity to do that.
Exactly. You have the capacity to do so. And you can effortlessly switch between formal, technical, and casual registers as the context demands.
So what defines the most advanced skills at this ultimate level?
C2 speakers can understand virtually everything they read or hear with no difficulty. This includes highly abstract content, obscure technical jargon, specialized academic material across various fields, or even complex literary works that are dense with historical allusions.
In their production.
They can express ideas spontaneously, precisely, and they can incorporate deep levels of nuance, humor, and persuasive rhetoric effortlessly. They can handle incredibly demanding communication situations with a level of confidence and fluency that rivals the most educated native speakers.
And to fully illustrate how exceptionally demanding this formal standard is, we should circle back to that crucial fact we mentioned earlier.
That many highly educated native speakers would struggle to pass a formal C2 examination.
Which is just mind-blowing.
It's the crucial takeaway that really reduces the pressure on any learner who is aiming for C2. It's not just good English, it's a formal, academic, and professional standard that measures deep linguistic knowledge, including the ability to analyze and critique the language itself.
Whereas most native speakers acquire that knowledge passively.
Exactly. The C2 exam tests active, analytical knowledge.
So the goal at C2 is less about hunting for new basic vocabulary, and it's far more about refining your style, your register, and the depth of your expression. It truly represents linguistic freedom, where the language offers zero resistance to your most complex or subtle thoughts. Okay, let's circle back now to where we started. We established that knowing your level is about getting clarity and direction, about getting a useful snapshot in time.
Right.
So with that clarity in hand, we need to identify some of the common psychological pitfalls that can derail learners at any stage, from A1 all the way to C2.
Yes, let's clearly list the habits that you should consciously try to shed to maintain a healthy, sustainable learning mindset. First and foremost,
Let me guess. Comparison.
you must absolutely avoid comparing yourself to others. Social media, online forums, they are full of people who are boasting about inflated levels or showing off their hyper-advanced skills.
But that's not helpful.
It's destructive. Every learner's journey is unique. Comparing your middle chapter, your current B1 struggle, to someone else's polished, edited C2 ending chapter is profoundly damaging to your self-esteem and your motivation.
What's the second pitfall?
Stop focusing exclusively on your weaknesses. This is a really common habit, particularly among those B2 speakers we talked about who have that high level of awareness.
Okay.
So if you have fantastic reading comprehension, a strong B2 skill, but you struggle with spontaneous speaking, which might be a weaker B1 area for you,
You should celebrate the B2 skill.
celebrate it. And then strategically focus your energy on improving the B1 area, rather than just constantly telling yourself that you're bad at English overall.
And the third habit to avoid.
Resist the urge to treat a level, whether it's A2, B1, or C1, as a permanent defining label of who you are. It's just a measurement of your current tool set. And that tool set is actively expanding every single day you practice. When you change your focus, your level will change too.
This brings us back to the importance of consistency over comparison.
English proficiency is not a sprint. It's not a race where you win by passing the finish line first.
It's a relationship.
It is a long-term, evolving relationship that you build with practice, with patience, and with curiosity. What truly matters in the long run is consistency. Showing up every day, even for just a short targeted practice session, builds far more resilience and skill than these sporadic, intense bursts of studying that just lead to burnout.
So let's summarize the concrete, practical, positive value of taking an assessment or even just doing this detailed self-check exercise we've just gone through. What are the benefits for you, the learner, moving forward?
Knowing your level provides essential structure and strategy. First, it helps you choose the right materials. If you're A2, trying to read C1 literature is just going to lead to frustration and burnout.
Right.
If you're B1, you should be seeking out intermediate content that challenges you without completely overwhelming you.
Second, and I think this is the most important part, it allows you to set realistic, achievable goals.
Yes, you stop striving for some vague, impossible concept like, I want to be fluent.
And instead,
You can transition to concrete steps like, I want to solidify my B1 structures and reach B2 in speaking within the next 9 months. It's specific. It's measurable.
And third, it gives you a tangible, objective way to track your progress over time. It offers concrete evidence of your success.
And every single level has inherent value, whether you're mastering simple greetings at A1 or subtle nuance at C2. That progress, regardless of the level, should be acknowledged and it should be celebrated.
Ultimately, the core reassurance here is that knowing your level is an incredibly positive and empowering step. It moves you away from that vague, amorphous frustration.
And toward clear, directed goals. It transforms that nervous energy into confident, strategic learning. We want to leave you with one final reassurance. Regardless of whether you discovered today that you're at the A1 foundational stage, or the B2 competence level, or even the C1 mastery level, you are already part of the global English-speaking world, simply by engaging with the language, by showing up, by listening to this deep dive. That continuous effort is inherently valuable.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to consider as you move forward on your journey. If A1 is the necessary foundation, and B2 is the functional competence that opens most of the doors you'll ever need,
and C2 is true linguistic freedom,
then the best level is always, without exception, the one you are strategically and calmly working toward next.
I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us on this very important self-discovery deep dive. We really hope this exploration of the CEFR framework gives you the clarity and the encouragement you need for your next step.
We hope it was helpful.
And you can always find more calm, real-life English guidance like this in the trusted space of Fluent Mindcast.
A great resource.
We'll catch you next time for the next deep dive.